It's just 12 noon, and we would like to just remind everybody that the event is now being recorded. We'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us. This is Rowan University Women's Alliance Network, and we are elated to present leadership talks featuring presentations from some of Rowan's most exceptional women leaders. We warmly welcome today Dr. Mira Lalovic-Hand, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Rowan University. We welcome Ms. Yvonne Torruella Ortiz, Inaugural Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Rowan University's School of Osteopathic Medicine, and Ms. Heather Simmons, Deputy Director to the Gloucester County Board of Commissioners and Rowan University's Director of Strategic Projects. I just wanted to mention that Dr. Sue Lehrman, Dean of Rowan University's William Rohrer College of Business, was originally slated to join us today, but had difficulty due to travel, a little bit of a conflict, and cannot. But we are so grateful to Heather Simmons for joining us. My name is Denise Dennery. I am the interim chair of Rowan's Women's Alliance Network Advisory Board. Today, we will find out what personal and professional experiences led these inspirational women to become who they are today. I wanted to mention we are grateful and appreciative to TD Bank for their incredible support and sponsorship of this year's programming. We are also extremely appreciative of Rowan University leadership as speakers and attendees to so many of our events. Audience members received a detailed bio already of each of our speakers when they originally registered for this event, but briefly, let me offer a little bit about each speaker. As Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Rowan University, Dr. Mira Lalovic-Hand provides strategic leadership for the planning, design, implementation, and use of information systems and technology on all of our university campuses. Recognized as a fierce technologist by Fierce Education in 2021, Dr. Lalovic-Hand advocates for information technology that fosters collaboration, encourages innovation, supports patient care, and promotes data-based decision-making. Ms. Yvonne Ortiz, Inaugural Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Rowan's School of Osteopathic Medicine, her role is to guide the medical and scientific communities to evaluate and innovate the teaching, learning, and working environment to increase the racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and gender diversity of the physician and scientist workforce. And Heather Simmons serves as the Deputy Director for Gloucester County Board of Commissioners and Rowan University's Director of Strategic Projects. She's the longest serving female commissioner, formerly freeholder, in Gloucester County history. She launched the 70-member Gloucester County Economic Recovery Collaborative in 2021 with a focus on post-pandemic economic recovery and resilience. We're looking forward to hearing from each of these lovely women. And if you don't mind starting us off, Dr. Lalovic-Hand, would you mind beginning?
Thank you, Denise. I really appreciate the opportunity. I also wanted to thank our president for being so foreseeing, all these wonderful people, wonderful women in leadership. It is to their foresight, our leadership foresight, that we had all these opportunities, and previous speakers already demonstrated that. So I'm glad that you gave me this opportunity to contribute. So we start with the childhood. That was interesting part of journey to go back and reflect. So I try to summarize it for the short 12 minutes that I have, all that happened in the back. So I really had amazing, great childhood in amazing country that is no longer. It was childhood full of mountains, farms. My grandparents were in my every step growing up. In being in a city with kids playing games, I was tomboy all the time. My parents were in industry, film industry, and I remember all the time having kids liking being my friends because being able to go to see pre-movies. Then after that, I came school. Being growing up in Yugoslavia, schools are really equal opportunity for all the kids. There is no poor neighborhoods or rich neighborhoods, which was wonderful. So opportunities for all the kids were there. And I was excelling in math and language. So when it came to the time where I wanted to choose the high school, back there, high schools were similar to colleges here. You have to go to particular high school, like a nursing high school or a literature high school. I was really not thrilled with my ability to memorize history, geography, and therefore going to path of legal or medical was not in my path, even though my mother would love that. So I chose the math high school, more generic, and I got from there a lot of nice, a very well-rounded education. What happened there was a lot of hard work. And I don't remember being anything but a tomboy with pants and shoes, but that resembled boys' shoes. And the math was tough, and I really didn't like much my high school from that perspective. But going back later on, I realized how much of me those faculty installed on me who I am today. One of the moments that I want to share with you was our literature teacher. She was so easy going in terms of figuring out how to explain the books and what the writer wanted to always say. One of the things that stick with me forever is a poem by Anton Branko Šimić, of course, a Serbian poet. And the poem is called Warning. And one line is, it says, "Man, be careful not to go, small as you are, under the stars." In translation, or how I interpret it, is be careful not to go through entire life unnoticed. Do something big that people will remember, that your name will stay behind after you, long after you're gone. Still trying to figure out how to accomplish that. Well, tell you what I have done so far. Choosing after high school, math high school, it was between electrical and transportation engineering was easy. It was kind of logical path. And prestigious electrical engineering or not so prestigious transportation engineering, I got in both. But I chose transportation engineering because, believe it or not, the ladies in front desk there were kind, were almost treating me as a family. While in electrical engineering, it was more matter of fact. A lot of kids were there, and it was none of that warmth. My parents weren't thrilled, but here we go. That's how I chose, just because the human factor is so important. You want to be in this environment that is scary, big, new, where someone will take care of you. And that also stick with me as I grew through all my experiences. And then war happened. So from there, I wanted to share a couple of slides here. Let me see how they do that. I asked my people what would be one sentence that characterize my leadership, and that's what they say, embracing opportunities in challenges, while through challenges. But go back to what happened in high school or beginning of the college. My country went to war, and everything that I knew about life all of a sudden lost any track, any direction. As a matter of fact, the life turned around, and I experienced total devastation. I was in Belgrade, my family was in Bosnia, and this is how it whole thing looked like back then. Sorry, I will move this so you can see. So, finished undergraduate degree in Belgrade, and I had to work 3 jobs because economy was non-existent, inflation was huge, people were devastated. Everyone, even in Serbia, that wasn't directly under attack, knows someone or have a lot of refugees there. And my entire family was back in Bosnia. So taking care of me, taking care of my sister, I realized the only way, the only power I can have in this chaos and unreasonable meaning of life is to go through school and have ability to do something, to have a skill. And I guess I overdid it. I got in most prestigious my first job was basically through scholarship, and I got into most prestigious in Institute for Transportation and Technology in Belgrade. Basically all engineers of different kinds trying to figure out transportation systems from air, road, and railroad. There, I was trying to just fit in. One day, my professor said, "Hey, I have this idea of us having publications, so we will post it." It was a conference in Europe called Informs, and it was about our simulations. So I was a presenter. There I met my future professor and advisor in University of Cincinnati. Didn't plan it, didn't think of it, but it happened. So I went back to my boss and I asked for a year of absence so I can complete master's degree and end up in Cincinnati. That is one other part where I met amazing, wonderful people. And there, again, I realized I have to do this quick. And I did in a year. But at the same time, America was putting pressure on Slobodan Milosevic, president in Serbia at the time, so much so that there were a lot of conflicts going on. There were air attacks on Belgrade, so there were no flights going back home. So the only thing I could do is apply for the next degree I could and try to figure out scholarship so I can finish. And that was the next thing, accomplishing my doctorate degree in 2 years. It was no life. If it wasn't for my Cincinnati friends, I don't think I would have made it. It was really hard. Being away from home is always in a turmoil of war where you have no pride about things that are happening. So fast forward, finishing degree, Y2K happened. It was first job at University of Drexel University, my first job in America. It was challenging. It was something that I have to create. And from there, I did create several programs that were very successful and moved to post-university help processes there, which led me finally to Rowan University and today's job. Through all this journey, I learned a lot, and I'm proud, very proud, of my team today. Today, my job is leading this really wonderful team that supports entire university. We are very diverse. I am so very proud of that. I foster diversity of thought, and throughout that, we accomplish every diversity component of it that helps us integrate university's needs and accomplish so much. When I started with IRT, it was 2013. We just acquired SOM, and it was a lot of learning to do. We were growing significantly. We just got so many cyber attacks across the universe of IT, and that was a new thing. So in all these challenges, navigating growth was enormously difficult. Not to mention my background, as I just explained, was in IT, and getting buy-in from my team was not also easy a thing to accomplish. So that's where I learned how I must put all these powers together, the powers of leadership, the inherent power or executive power, however you want to reward, corrective, expert, and referent powers. I encourage you to brush on those, because they're not powers where you do something. It's not about you. It's about helping organization be what it's supposed to be, representing all the people that are in front of you, knowing who they are, knowing their backgrounds, knowing their kids, knowing their parents, knowing funerals and graduations, all those pieces, while still having a direction where the university should go and how you have to contribute to that. The additional component to this difficulty is that IT needs to be ahead of the university, so that when university is ready to use the technology, we already have it. So having to understand your team, having to know how they work and how to help them grow is everything. My powers are the people that work with me. And today we have accomplished, I think we are in the middle of the road where we wanted to be. But when you look back, I am really, really proud of people who work with me. We are here, as I said in the last component here, to basically build community and be that connection that makes the university university. We are not just IT. We are not just that tool that says, okay, when I have a broken computer, and it's not a person who is just saying, are you sure that you turn your computer off and on again? We are business partners. We help all the university to make the next best research, to make the best help to student who is in trouble, to make sure that parents hear their students, kids, and they're safe and secure, that everyone communicates in the right, effective way, and that we are their support. So I know I overdid my time, but I do want to say a couple of more things. I am also proud advocate for women. I know it's hard, but I hope by my example, I can show that that's just possible. And one last thing I wanted to say, I still search for that, being that man walking not so small under the star. I'm still figuring it out. But what I have figured out, it is that it is my team to support them, to be flexible and compassionate. And I do have to have a stamina to challenge and foster their resilience and excellence. often I tell them, fish stinks from the head. So I always challenge myself. If I'm comfortable, we are in trouble. And that comfortable place to be, to always want and push them further, is what I feel leadership must have. And maybe the last guide that I wanted to share is, this is my guide. I use Colin Powell's statement of failed leadership. In my head runs all the time. He of course talks about soldiers. So word for word, he said, the day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them, or they concluded that you do not care. In either case, it's a failed leadership. And that keeps me going. I know my people come and bring me tons of problems, and I'm proud of it. Thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Mira, thank you so much. It is truly an honor to get to know you in this way today. I appreciate what you shared with us. We've really learned so much, and I hope we can all consider you a friend now.
Please do.
Breaking through these barriers. Yvonne Ortiz, let's move to you, please.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be a conversation. I don't have slides. I'm struck by our topic today, and there's a quote that actually a colleague from the Wellness Center shared with myself and actually the DEI leadership team. And it says, "I stand on the sacrifices of a million women and ancestors before me, thinking, what can I do to make this mountain taller so that the women after me can see farther?" And I think that really captures kind of why I went into higher ed, and also what inspired me and kind of kept me going. So I am originally from the Bronx, New York. I am Puerto Rican. I grew up in a mixed generational household, and what that means is growing up, my maternal grandparents helped raise me, and so I had two sets of parents to contend with every major life decision growing up. And it was very close to my maternal grandparents who have passed on, and my grandfather lived to be 100. Both my grandparents, well, all four of my grandparents were born in Puerto Rico, and my grandfather played professional baseball when the leagues were segregated, and played for the Ponce Pirates. So that when he and my grandmother came to New York to live from Puerto Rico, that experience of him playing professional baseball really shaped how my family saw race as we came to the continental United States, and understanding that while I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Black in terms of how I identify. And so that was something that was very influential as I was growing up. So I grew up low income. I was a first gen college student when I went to NYU on a scholarship. And all those years I was told, I needed to go to college, and was real clear that going to college was a priority by my family. Yet I was really lost of what to do once I got here. And I made all of the mistakes that students make. I didn't go to career services. I was too afraid to go to new student orientation. And so I skipped orientation and stayed hunkered down in my residence hall eating ramen noodles because I was too terrified to go outside. And going to NYU was quite different because none of the faculty looked like me. I didn't have a single faculty member of color until I got to graduate school at Rutgers, New Brunswick. And that's not to say that I didn't develop good mentors, but I think all of the mistakes that I made as a student and all the insecurities that I had as a student was much of why I wound up going into higher ed. And I often reflect on that when I talk with students, not that my journey or the way that I dealt with things is the way that they need to, but really so that students know that you understand, and that you get it when they feel like they're an outlier, and they feel like they don't belong. And I will just say this because, I hear the term imposter syndrome thrown around a lot, and I did have a recurring nightmare. I remember it went on until the summer before my senior year in college. And I was a good student. I had to be, because if I didn't get a certain GPA, I lost my scholarship, and that was the only way I could pay for college. Um, and um, and I remember in the dream, I would hear somebody knocking on my residence hall door, and I would open it, and they would say, Yvonne, when you got in, we made a mistake. And so, you need to leave, and we need to talk about how you're going to pay back that money. And it was a recurring nightmare that I had. And some people think about that of, oh, imposter syndrome, you didn't really think you measure up. But I got to tell you, it wasn't imposter syndrome. It was that even then, I was keenly aware of how systems work and how some of these systems weren't built for students like me to be successful. And so it was really being aware at how powerful those systems can work, to make sure that I don't graduate, right? That I'm not successful, but it wasn't that I didn't believe I was really smart enough or what have you. So all of that really spurred my desire to go into higher education. I initially wanted to go to law school, started that, realized I didn't like it. Melissa Wheatcroft, if you're on here, I'm sorry. It's not a dig to the law profession. And I decided I'm going to go do this master's program in education. And I have to say my family did not understand, what I did. My father, for many, many years, my father's a retired NYPD police officer, and always wanted to say my daughter, the lawyer. And so he was like, my daughter, I don't know, she works on a campus, she runs around with students all day. I don't know what she does, but she works at a university. And it wasn't until I became a dean that my father still didn't know what I did, but he thought, well, that sounds really good. So it sounds important. So I'll say, well, my daughter's a dean at a university. And people be like, oh, that's great. And he'd say, yeah. No idea what I did. He just knew I ran around with students and I was involved with students all the time. In my higher ed career, I've had a number of roles. I started off in res life. I believe that is the hardest job. If you are a hall director and you are out there listening to me, I think that is the hardest job I've ever had, because you live where you work. You don't have a lot of power, and that is tough. So shout out to all the res life and housing people. Had a career in student conduct and Greek life and student activities and all of that good stuff. And I've been in higher ed for almost 30 years. And on my daughter's, I was a chief student affairs officer at a small, historically Black university. And I decided to step down from my role and take on a new role that, was in higher ed, but it wasn't a traditional university position that I had been doing for so many years before that. It provided me some flexibility to spend more time with my kids. And I remember what I told the president at the time was, when I tendered my resignation, I said, if I'm honest, I spend more time with other people's kids than my own. And it was my daughter's 13th birthday. And a lot of people think that when your kids get older, that they need less time, but they need a different kind of time, I think. And my kids are now college age. My son, who I will not name because he will be really embarrassed, transferred to Rowan this spring and is actually a student at Rowan. And I have to tell you, just as a side note, it is the greatest compliment I can give Rowan that I am sending my child to you for you to take care of and to love on and to make sure he's successful. But I really just, I wanted to be able to be the household that the teenage kids hung out at, that I knew all my kids' friends, that I could be present for wrestling tournaments and working concession stands and, for volleyball and track and all the things. My kids were both year-round athletes, and to be able to do all of that. And so I pivoted. I pivoted in my career, and people told me, you're nuts. What are you doing? You shouldn't do that. That's going to hurt your career. And I think a lot of my career has been, this constant trying to do what's best for my family. I was married for 22 years. I'm divorced now. And so I was making career decisions based on what my partner's needs were, what my kids needed, all of those things. And so you make some pivots in careers. And one of the things that I learned in this journey is that careers are not linear. They take all kinds of turns and twists and things depending on what's going on. One of the things that I'm most grateful for is that time that I did make my career pivot, as I call it, and spent more time with my kids while they were still home before they went to college. And a lot of the experiences that I've described to you have really shaped both my leadership skills as well as my supervisory style. So I'm going to talk just real briefly. I'm going to highlight a few things about ways in which mentors and also peers, right, have influenced my behaviors and my decisions. And I'm just going to kind of, call some of them off. And then I'll mention at different points maybe some lessons I've learned along the way. So as a leader, surround yourself with smart people and those that don't necessarily think like you do. And that takes a lot of confidence to be able to do that, right? And I will clap for you until it is my turn. Some people see other people as sources of competition, and your insecurity shows when you do. It's a scarcity mindset. And these are things that, my mentors and peers emulated for me. And I would take copious notes as I watched people of how they led or how they handled a challenge or things like that, of, what how the kind of leader I wanted to be. I will say throughout my career, I was typically the youngest and sometimes the only woman, and often the only person of color in the room or at the table that I was at. And so this idea of knowing my audience and dress and appearance and, how you say things and all of those things, I spent a lot of time and attention on. And I have to say that, Paul Laurence Dunbar talks about we wear the mask, right? For people of color, we wear the mask. And as I got older, I realized that my attitude changed. I think part of it was in getting older. I got a little tired of, I don't feel like wearing a full suit today. And, my colleagues around me wear khakis and polos, but they're taken seriously because of the identities that they hold. And I feel like I've got to walk around with a suit because of the identities I hold. And, I'm not doing that today. And so it's something that I had to come into being to be more comfortable with. And I call that out, they also call it respectability politics, right? That in order to be respectable, in order to be valued, in order to be listened to, you need to do and behave and be a certain way. I have to say that that's something that I've learned from my own kids. My kids are like, Mom, you've done everything that you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. How's that working for you? It still doesn't keep you from, for example, not necessarily always being treated fairly, whether it's in the workplace or in the world, right? In the spaces that we move in. And then the other things that I learned from mentors, while, you know, there's a lot of things that are unfair and unjust, when you're going to, you know, move into leadership, particularly in spaces where there's not a lot of you, you've got to decide personally, what are some of the sacrifices and masks that you're willing to wear to get into the room so that you can get a seat at the table, so you can actually gain some power to build that mountain higher and taller to help other people. Um, and then one of the greatest things that I learned from a mentor, and I'm going to call her out, and I hope that she'll see the recording, is Frances Lucas. She was a vice president of student affairs at Emory when I worked in residence life. One of the things that she believed in me, she mentored me. We did not always agree on things, and the thing that I appreciated about her is that despite the huge difference in our titles and where I was in the hierarchy in her division, you could disagree with her. And one of the things that she told me was always have walking away money as you move up in your career, whatever that is, right? And so that was always something that I took very seriously. She said, you know, there are times when you may feel like what you're doing or what you're being asked to do isn't consistent with who you are. And at the point that you feel like that's the case, you need to have walking away money. You need to be able to say, I'm going to step away from this with grace and look for my next opportunity. And so that was something that I took to heart very early in my career. And then finally, I think, you know, being confident and humble. I think you can do both. Everything I know, everything that I need to be successful, I know that I already have, because I know where I come from and who I belong to, and just standing on the shoulders of others to be able to be where I am. So, and then also just knowing that I can learn from all types of people, right? Not just people with, you know, formal power or degrees or what have you, but I take nuggets of wisdom from lots of different kinds of people. And I think that experience, when I was an undergrad, I came very close to dropping out of school. I had gotten a 22 on a statistics exam, and at the time I was a architecture major. I was the only woman in my cohort, and I was the only person of color in my cohort, and I grew tired. And I was taking a bunch of math classes, and you know, some of them were just eating my lunch. And I finally walked into my advisor and said, you know, if I try to build a bridge, people are going to die, so I need to change my major. And what I learned from that, you know, I had never failed anything. I had never failed a test. I had never, and so I told you about those nightmares at the beginning for a reason. You know, I was having those nightmares, and I thought, see, this is a signal that I really don't belong here. This place is just, I'm not cut out for this, to be in this place. And I remember I did all the things that we tell students not to do. Like I did the, you know, shamed, you know, when they hand you the test back in class, you know, you kind of slide it across the table so nobody can see it, face down. I slunked in my chair. I left class and didn't talk to my professor afterwards. I went to the bathroom, I had a good cry, and then I went to the student union to eat lunch. And in the student union, there was a gentleman, and I'm not kidding, his name was James Brown. And Mr. Brown worked the grill in the student center. And at NYU at the time, it was not uncommon that if you were a Black student, that the only people that you saw at NYU that looked like you were cleaning your residence halls and serving your food. And and they really loved on us. They loved on us and would knock on our door like, aren't you supposed to be in class? Or, you know, where are you supposed to be? Or how are you doing? And Mr. Brown was a gruff kind of man. He was a little rough around the edges. He wasn't very touchy-feely and warm and fuzzy at all. And I remember he looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, well, you know, I failed this test and I just really don't think I belong here. And it wasn't just about that test, right? It was also just the environment, just really feeling out of place. It was all building up. And that day it was just, it was too much. And I remember he looked at me and he said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" And I said, "I don't think I belong here. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to tell my mother that I'm going to leave school." He looked at me and he said, "Aren't there people you can talk to about the trouble you're having in class?" And I was like, "Yeah, but," and you know, and I'm hemming and hawing. And he said, "You know, there's people that you can go to for help. You need to do that. Because, or else you're going to be back here with me." That's exactly what he said. And I said, "Well, sir, there's no shame in the work that you do. You know, I come from a blue collar family. You know, there's no shame in the work that you do." And he said, "I know, I know, I know, but you can do more and you will. So I don't know who you need to go see, but you need to go get some help. You don't need to leave school." And he's the reason why I graduated. So when I say you can get wisdom and supports and wise counsel from all kinds of people, I draw from that experience of reminding me of that, to just not be a better leader, but just be a better person. So I'm going to stop there, given the time. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Yvonne, thank you so much. That was incredible. I'm going to move swiftly right over to Heather Simmons. We look forward to hearing from you as well. Thank you. Heather, 1 second.
You're muted.
I believe you're muted.
I've
Let's
only
try
been
again.
doing this for 2 years. You would think I would remember to unmute, right? It's only been 2 years of this. So my apologies, everyone. I just was saying thank you to Denise and to the Women's Alliance Network for inviting me to participate. I'm certainly no replacement for Dr. Lehrman, who's a wonderful friend and colleague, but it's a privilege to be here and an honor to be with Mira and Yvonne. How wonderful it is to get a little bit of insight into these two incredible women, and to attend all of these events through the course of the year and learn a little bit more about our colleagues and friends on campus. When I was asked to talk a little bit about my path, of course, I did what I always do and defaulted to my father. So I did put together a few slides that help to illuminate a little bit about where I come from, and I can pull that up now. Did that come up?
No, it has. We were not able to see that yet.
Okay. I don't know why.
Jess, can we get your help just to make sure that
Here it is. I've got it. I've got it.
Okay,
Here we go.
beautiful.
Okay, so you can all see that, yes? All right. Again, you know, Mira, I need you more and more every day. I've only been doing this for 2 years. I still don't know what I'm doing. So thank you all for this opportunity. The image that I chose to put on the front page of my PowerPoint is of my father. My parents were both so young when they died, and we were so young when they died, that this picture of him looking very young and actually intentionally in black and white is really how I remember him. He was a judge and a lawyer in the city of Philadelphia. He was very, very formal in his personal life as well as in his professional life. And he was a leader. He chose himself to be a public servant in his law career and in his judicial career. And because of my admiration for him, it was a path that I always have followed. Okay, so I put together a little bit of a photo album of my family. And again, these were intentional photographs. The image in the middle is of my parents the day that they got engaged. My dad was a young lawyer. My mother had served briefly as his assistant. And they fell in love and got married a few years later. And this picture kind of always encapsulated their love story for me. And I thought it was funny. I randomly chose some photos of my family for this. And with a few exceptions, we're very formal and either in dressy clothes or in uniforms in all of them. And I think that also said a little bit about how we were raised and who we were, that we were kind of carved out in my father's image, which was very formal, very loving, but very, very formal people. And our priorities were simple. Our priorities were that family is number one, and that formality was very important in preserving that. There's a structure to the family, and the family is the number one thing, and everything else follows that. And certainly my siblings and I, despite the fact that our parents died when we were young, we've carried that forward. And there's a hospital photograph in here that you'll see of me and my brother, my youngest brother, Tim, who donated a kidney to me 2 years ago. And the fact that he was willing and almost enthusiastic about making that extraordinary sacrifice really says a lot about how we were raised, and the fact that my almost entire adult life, my siblings knew that, one day Heather might need a kidney. And when that day finally came, both my brother and my sister, my other brother was not in a position to be able to donate, but my other siblings said, yeah, sure, give me the paperwork, no problem, whatever you need. And that was truly their attitude about it. And it really said a lot for how we were raised. So there were some simple lessons that my dad taught me through the years, and I have chosen some words of some folks that you might recognize to help talk a little bit about my father's words. And I think some of the folks that I chose, some of the quotes that I chose are from people that he would find funny. And the first one is, of course, Dolly Parton. And she has a quote that I've used a lot that says, find out who you are and do it on purpose. And, my father, always felt that we should intentionally be ourselves, no matter what the situation, and that we should do that on purpose. And I am his daughter. The way that he raised me was to be me, and largely to be in his shadow. And the way that he raised us was to be people for others. We all attended Catholic school through college, and I attended St. Joseph's University, which not surprisingly was where my father went to college. And the Jesuit community is based on the idea of people for others. And this was a path that he chose through his life. And I've been very fortunate to be able to carve out a path in my life. This connects very closely to why I chose to go into politics and into government. When I was asked to run for office originally 12 years ago, in typical Simmons fashion, I started to talk to people and ask questions and read up on it. And when I was originally asked, have you ever considered running for office? I laughed. Who would be dumb enough to do that? And truthfully, when I started talking to people and started to read, I stumbled upon a report by the Wall Street Journal report that said that there are a number of reasons why women choose to run for office. And primary among them is to make a difference in their world. And as I was reading that report, there was a corollary report about why women choose to start their own businesses. And at the time, I was running my own business. And the reason that women versus men in general, according to this report, and of course it's gross generalizations, but the notion is one that I think a lot of us can relate to. Why do women start their own businesses? And the reason was to fit a professional challenge into a life filled with other challenges. And in the case of many women, those other challenges include raising children, caring for aging parents, dealing with the financial instability of a household, dealing with illness. And certainly in my case, in my personal life, dealing with my own illness and the illnesses of my parents and my grandparents were life-shaping things. And I did choose to start my own business because I needed to fit a professional challenge into a life that was filled with other personal challenges. And I chose to run for office because I felt, because of the lessons my father taught me, that I needed to make a difference for other people like me who perhaps didn't have a voice. And that was the path that I chose. Another quote that I chose was by Tina Fey, and I think my dad would find it a little bit ironic that I snuck Saturday Night Live into a presentation, but whatever the problem, be part of the solution. Don't just sit around raising questions and pointing out obstacles. Now, where my father's advice fit into this was because he had a saying that he always said to us, and I've incorporated into a lot of talks that I've done over the years. And that was this, that in life, we have a choice that you can sit on the sidelines and watch things happen around you or watch things happen to you, or you can suit up and get in the game and make things happen on your own. It is very easy to sit around and complain about what the problems are. We all do that, right? That's human nature, to complain about what the status quo is and how things are and how it's not fair. And it's much, much more difficult to say, I don't want to be part of the problem. I don't want to just complain about what the problem is. I'd rather try and contribute to a solution. Now, does that mean you're always successful in finding a solution? No, but what it does mean is that you're willing to get a little dirty, to suit up, to get in the game and be a part of making things happen around you, making this world better when you leave it than it was when you got here. The next one is Eleanor Roosevelt. Do what you feel in your heart to be right. You'll be criticized anyway. And this is a really important one. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school from Montessori all the way through senior year in college. And I think I mentioned that already, that a key focus of that educational pathway was being a person for others and doing the right thing. Now, we all know the right thing isn't always the easy thing. In fact, it's usually the hardest thing to do. And certainly in government, I have learned that if people are always happy with you, you're probably not doing your job. And I think all of us in our professional careers have learned that sometimes making the right decision to do the right thing isn't always the thing that's understood by the team around you. But doing the right thing is the important path to follow. And that's not an easy thing to do. But I have found that it always takes you on the correct path. And then finally, Thomas Edison. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. I was sick as a child. I was 14 years old when I was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. I was in my early 20s when I was diagnosed with diabetic kidney failure. And my dad was the one who really advocated for me and taught me how to advocate for myself. And the thing that always struck me about the way that he did that was he would come up to my room and he would sit on my bed with me, often with my mother or one of my siblings in tow, and say, it's okay to cry, Heather. Tonight we're going to cry. Put your head on my shoulder. We're going to cry it out. Tomorrow, we're going to start over. We're going to get it right. We're going to figure it out. We're going to move forward because there's no other choice. And I think that in many ways, I've lived my life that way. We can very easily sit back and bewoe the things in our lives that haven't gone well. And I think for all of us, life, it doesn't go the way you expect it to, but there are blessings in that. There are silver linings to every cloud. And that sounds very cliche, but it's very true. And to this day, when I have those moments where I just want to cry it out, I picture my dad sitting next to me with his arm around me and saying, go ahead, it's okay to cry it out, but tomorrow we're going to start over. And if I take anything into my personal life and into my professional career, it is that as a team, we're going to figure out what went wrong, cry about it a little bit in our own very professional way, and then start over tomorrow, figure out a better way to solve the problem, because there's always a better way. There's always another path. And these are simple lessons. I'm a simple person. I see things in terms of the life lessons that I've taken with me in largely black and white, and that's due to my father. But I find that despite their simplicity, these are lessons that have served me well. And I think as I talk to other people in my life, they're lessons that we all share. So I thank you so much, Denise, for the opportunity to talk a little bit about my dad and the path that he taught me. I don't think I actually said his name. His name was Earl Simmons, and he was the hero of my life. So thanks for the opportunity.
Wow. I personally, I'm completely blown away. I'd like to thank Mira, Yvonne, and Heather for your insight, for your willingness to display to us your bravery and your inner strength, all that brings you, forward today and in each step forward. We thank you. We do have some questions from the audience. Let's see if we can quickly get to those. Not that the answers have to be quick and short, but let's see what we can get to. Tabitha Dobbins is asking Mira, what advice would you give to those students, high school and college age, currently living in the Ukraine? Mira, you obviously face so many just challenges, and you've seen what devastation looks like in such a personal way. What advice would you have for students?
Thank you for the question, Tabitha, and opportunities to reflect again. I hope that I try successfully paint the entire journey. It was this fantastic childhood, and then all of a sudden a stop, a freeze, and it's not easy to come out of that. And I was in a very dark place, thinking next day, next morning, months, and then years came through. This war was for 5 years, and after the economic sanction and all, and being a young person wanting to experience everything else you see on TV, people are experiencing. I never envisioned today where I have Rowan family, my own family, success in doing what I love doing, and excitement about leading the team next. So there is a light out of the tunnel, but the main part is you start with that one major power, which is power of expertise, and you gain that. So focus on your education, focus on your gaining your personal experiences that will be employable tomorrow. That is one thing that nobody can take from you. And that's where universities will never disappear in some sense, because that's what every kid needs to do, grow up with us. I hope I helped there.
This is actually for each of you, but Yvonne, if we could start with you and then get Heather's response and then Mira's response. From Jahaira Marquez, human connection was important in deciding the type of studies that each of you selected. How do we create those nurturing environments, those spaces at Rowan, so that women and others can work on their academic and professional development?
I'll start off. I think so. Student success work in student affairs, DEI work, is all about investing in the wholeness of people. That's to me, that's what it's all about, right? And I think being very intentional in whatever your spheres of influence are. You know, for many years, I had a division that I led and supervised many people. Right now, as an inaugural director, I don't actually have an immediate staff, but there are colleagues that, specifically women colleagues that I support, that I cheer for, that come to me for counsel, that, and I think being intentional that you are going to take the time and the space to cultivate relationships with people across your organization, and invest in them, and that they see that through the rapport that you build with them, and that you're trustworthy, I think is a start to be able to start creating that sense of community. And then, you know, I think people pay more attention, less to what you say and what you actually do and how you behave, right? Or they should. And I am not perfect, but I try to carry myself in such a way that demonstrates that I am trustworthy, and that, you know, I can clap for you, and that takes nothing away from me, right? Like, I can clap for you, and I can, you know, be here and give you advice and listen, be a shoulder when you need to cry, as Heather talked about. Okay, you're gonna cry. All right, now what's next? And I can engage in that conversation about what's next too. So I think that intentionality, and then yeah, being who you are as an example is where I'd start.
You're muted.
So sorry. Heather, would you have anything to add to how you would create those nurturing environments?
First of all, I think Yvonne did such a good job in encapsulating that. But what I would add is I think Rowan is actually pretty good at that, through activities like this Women's Alliance Network, which really gives people from across the university an opportunity to come together in unique and educational ways. Also, through the course of the pandemic, I think the university was very intentional about understanding the challenges that each of us were facing in different ways, and helping us through our departments and through our teams to address them. In my position in the president's office in strategic projects, I have the privilege of being able to work across the university in multiple departments on different projects, and in different capacities. And what I've seen across the university is that there's a lot of team building and a lot of intentional efforts in different divisions, different departments, different offices to pull people together in a very team-focused way. And I think that's probably the most important strategy that we can have, that if we all feel like we're part of something that's bigger than ourselves and we're all contributing to a greater whole, then that helps to give us purpose and meaning in what we're doing.
And Mira, do you have any advice for how to create those nurturing environments?
Well, thank you. I agree with Heather. Rowan has been already laid ground, warm ground for that, because Jesse Schiefer recently talked to me, and he said, this is VP for Advancement. He just came in and he said, one thing that is interesting and much better in the university than anywhere else is that everyone is approachable. And from the cabinet down, I had that policy, always have, open door policy, and being open, vulnerable, being able to be open to criticism and challenges is what it's all about. And when people are not afraid to come and do that and be able to tell their story, and then you turn around and help and you make the difference, then others see that. That's how a path opens up for all of us. And so and in leadership, that's another power, being able to be vulnerable, being belly up, so that you can receive that criticism from people is so very important. I foster that with my teams all the time. It was hard, I have to tell you from the beginning, encouraging people to challenge. But it works. And I think another component to it is mentorship. Having to choose a mentor, walk in, just talk to your person, whoever you choose, and say, here's what I would like to do. And offer yourself. You will be surprised. People do help.
Wonderful advice. I know we've gone a little bit over with our time, and I want to be extremely respectful. Everybody that who has given us their hour and 5 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Rowan University's Women's Alliance Network thanks you. To the speakers, you are invaluable, just tremendous assets. I thank you, Mira, Yvonne, Heather, for joining us today. Thank you to those in the background with your technical expertise. We're so appreciative of getting to know you speakers much, much better today, and for sharing your stories with us. I thank you, and I thank all those who've attended today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
I put my email in the chat if anybody wants to stay in touch.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for including your email. That's great. All of you, thank you so much. We'll sign off now. Have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.